Discipline of assent, the role of reason and faith. Before you act, there is a thought. Before the thought, there is an impression, something that strikes the mind. The Stoics called this fantasia, a sound, a look, a memory. The world enters us, uninvited, but what happens next is ours. That is where the human being begins, not in what strikes him, but in how he responds. Imagine a workplace full of manipulation. The Stoic does not sink to that level. He keeps his promises. He speaks truth, even if it costs him. He does not gossip, does not flatter, does not scheme. His justice is quiet, consistent, and unshakable. Now imagine a community torn by division. The Christian does not merely retreat into prayer. He steps into the fracture with mercy, not to affirm falsehood, but to heal wounds. The Stoic is not a stone. He feels the storm. He simply does not hand it the wheel. In the same way, the Christian, when hearing Paul say, "Take every thought captive to make it obedient to Christ," is not being told to cease thinking. He is being taught to filter what is real from what is noise. Both traditions begin from a shared premise. The mind is a battlefield. The Stoic guards it with reason. Christianity guards it with faith, but not blind faith and not superstition. That meaning is not an invention of the mind, but a discovery, something we are called to see, to respond to, and ultimately to embody. For the Stoic, the Logos is discerned through reason. For the Christian, it is received through faith. But both insist. Meaning is real, and the self is called to conform to it, not bend it to its will. In a world saturated with relativism, this is a radical claim. Faith, in the mature Christian sense, is not the rejection of reason, but its transfiguration. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen, writes the author of Hebrews. Not ignorance of the unseen, but conviction. This too is assent, not to the first impression, but to something deeper. A Stoic, confronted with fear, asks, "Is this within my control?" A Christian, in the same moment, may ask, "Is this from God?" We are told now that meaning is personal, subjective, that truth is whatever you feel most deeply. But the Stoic stands firm. Emotion does not create truth. Feelings pass like weather. The Logos does not. To live well is to bring the self into alignment with this higher order. To think clearly, to act justly, to live as part of the whole. And the Christian echoes, yes, truth is not ours to create, but it is not cold or distant. It comes near, it speaks, it loves, it commands. Both questions serve the same purpose, to filter chaos and reassert order in the inner world. One leans on the Logos, the other on grace, but both are practices, not instincts. They must be learned. Let us imagine a modern example. A person wakes up and checks their phone. There is bad news, war, financial decline, a message from work. The mind immediately begins spinning. Anxiety, anger, helplessness. A Stoic pauses. These are impressions, not truths. The Logos gives structure. The word gives heart. Reason in Stoic thought is what separates us from the beasts. It is our divine spark. It allows us to rise above impulse, to examine our thoughts, to choose how to live. But it is also fragile. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But even reason can be wounded. It can be twisted by pride, fear, or desire. And this is where revelation enters. What is up to me in this? A Christian pauses. I will not be ruled by fear. Let me test this spirit. Is it rooted in love, power, and a sound mind? In both cases, the moment is reclaimed. The challenge, of course, is that impressions come fast and reason is slow. This is why the Stoic trains in advance through reflection, meditation, and dialogue. Default text. Mercy does not mean letting injustice pass. It means refusing to become its mirror. In both traditions, justice is not about superiority. It is about service. The Stoic acts justly, not to be admired, but because it is his nature. The Christian forgives not because it is easy, but because he himself has been forgiven. The motivation is internal, not performative. Modern activism often burns hot and fast. Outrage flares, then fades. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself each night, not because he forgot how to live, but because he knew how easily the world pulls us away from wisdom. So too does the Christian pray, study Scripture, fast, not as ritual, but as formation. As Paul said, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. It is the same battlefield, the same work. There is also humility in both traditions, a recognition that we are not gods. The Stoic does not command the universe. Christianity says, yes, look, but not only to the stars, look also to the cross. There the word speaks not just through harmony, but through sacrifice, not just through design, but through love. One gives us the architecture of meaning, the other gives us its heart. Both are corrective to the shallowness of our time. The Stoic trains us to think carefully, honestly, without excuse. He strips away illusion, demands coherence, refuses sentimentality. He only governs his own assent. Some things are up to us, and some are not, says Epictetus. The Christian affirms the same limitation, but within a relationship. Not my will, but yours be done. One surrenders to nature, the other to the divine. But in both, there is a letting go of the illusion of control, and from that letting go, a strange strength is born. Modern life, however, tells a different story. It teaches the opposite of the discipline of assent. Us beyond even that, to grace, to forgiveness, to the mystery of a love that defies calculation. And in both, there is responsibility. If Logos is real, then we must live in alignment with it. Not in self-indulgence, not in chaos, but with intention. If the word has spoken, then we must listen, not selectively, not when it's convenient. It says every impulse must be expressed, every opinion must be shared, every fear must be indulged. We are encouraged to act first and reflect later, if at all. But this is not freedom. It is slavery to the first impression, to the crowd, to the news cycle. To practice assent, whether through reason or through faith, is to live deliberately. It is to reclaim the space between stimulus and response, between thought and action. And in that space, character is forged. But always. So the question is not merely, what do I believe? The question is, do I live in harmony with what is true? Does my reason reflect the order of the cosmos? We should not pretend this is easy. It is not. It is easier to rage, easier to collapse, easier to scroll. But if we are to become more than fragments of reaction, more than passengers of mood, we must be able to pause and ask, is this thought true? Is this judgment wise? Is this feeling mine, or did I inherit it from the noise of the world? The Stoic seeks the inner citadel. The Christian seeks the renewed mind. Both are images of the same practice, discipline not of the body, but of the soul. The sun on your face, the breath in your chest, the voice of a friend, these are not small things. They are glimpses of eternity breaking into the moment. Death is not the enemy. It is the horizon. You cannot reach it, but you can walk toward it with purpose. The Stoics do not promise an afterlife. What lies beyond is not their concern. What matters is how you meet death, not with fear, but with dignity. So when the next wave comes, fear, pride, envy, despair, do not meet it with surrender. Do not believe every thought. Do not obey every feeling. Stand at the gate of your mind like a watchman. Question what seeks entry, and choose what deserves assent. voluntary poverty, and inner freedom. In a world ruled by acquisition, the man who desires little is the rarest of all. To the Stoic, poverty is not defined by what one lacks, but by one's dependence on what one thinks is needed. Does my faith reflect the humility to receive what I do not control? Do I see the world as meaningless accident or as a field seeded with purpose? There is no shallow answer here. You must sit in silence. You must listen. You must decide. The Stoic listens for the Logos and finds a way to endure. The Christian listens to the Word and finds a way to love. Memento mori. Death, eternity, and the present moment. Memento mori. Remember, you will die. It is not a threat. Seneca, who lived in immense wealth, wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." This is not hypocrisy, it is insight. He understood that wealth without detachment is a prison, and that poverty chosen is often richer than luxury clung to in fear. Christianity echoes this with equal clarity. Christ said to the rich man, "Sell all you have and follow me." Not as a denial of reason, but as its healing. The Christian does not discard reason. The Apostle Paul engages the philosophers of Athens. Augustine studies Plato. Aquinas builds theology on Aristotelian logic. But faith steps where reason alone cannot go. It opens the door not only to understanding the order of things, but to knowing the one who orders them. In the modern world, we often mistake information for wisdom. Not because possessions are evil in themselves, but because they often become substitutes for the real work, the inward journey. To let go voluntarily is to take the first step toward freedom. This principle is scandalous today. We are taught that meaning comes through accumulation, of wealth, of validation, of visibility. More is always better, but the human soul cannot be filled by addition. It is not a container. It is a fire, and too often what we add smothers it. Determine what you do and say and think. This is not about fearing death, it is about fearing wasted life. To remember death is to wake up, to become lucid in the dream of distractions. Death punctures illusion. It strips off what doesn't matter. Titles, wealth, noise. It leaves the essential, the self, and what the self has become. The Christian tradition carries the same wisdom. The Stoic practices voluntary poverty not to glorify lack, but to rehearse freedom. Epictetus advised sleeping on the ground, wearing rough clothes, going without, not to suffer, but to test the self. Can I still be myself if all is stripped away? He trains to meet misfortune with readiness, to be unshaken when fortune turns her back. This is not misery, it is mastery. The Christian fasts, the Christian gives, not because food or money are sins, but because detachment purifies love. Not tomorrow, that is speculation, but now, this breath, this thought, this heartbeat, here is where eternity touches time. To live with death in mind is not to shrink back from life. It is to enter it fully, to forgive, to speak truth, to hold those you love, to create what is beautiful, to suffer what must be suffered, to meet each moment as if it were both your first and your last. That is the freedom of those who have looked death in the eye and made peace with its silence. Default text. It is the ability to wear riches like a loose garment, grateful when it is there, undisturbed when it is not. There is also a paradox here. Those who practice detachment are often better stewards of what they do have. The Stoic does not waste. The Christian is not careless. Because nothing is taken for granted, everything is respected. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Receive wealth or prosperity without arrogance, and be ready to let it go." From ashes on the forehead to the words of Christ, what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? There is a consistent call. Do not live as if this world is all there is. This life is a seed, not a destination. But here is the paradox. Those who remember death most clearly are often the most alive. Why? Because when you see the limit, you cherish what is within it. When you know that time is finite, every hour becomes a sacred thing. As the Desert Fathers would say, what you cannot give away, you do not own, it owns you. Let us bring this into the modern world. Imagine someone loses their job. The pay is gone, the status is gone, the structure of their days collapses. If their identity was rooted in title or income, they fall into crisis, not just financial, but existential. But if they had practiced detachment, if their value was drawn from something within, then they bend, but they do not break. So the question is not, will I die? You will. The question is, what will I do with the breath still in me? The modern world hides from death. We sterilize it, disguise it, scroll past it. But this avoidance has a cost. We forget how to live. We chase pleasure, not meaning. We fill time, but do not dwell in it. Memento mori breaks that trance. It does not ask for melodrama. It asks for attention. Are you living as if this moment is your last, not in panic, but in presence? Or take another example, the person who always needs the latest device, the newest fashion, the next upgrade. This is not wealth. This is dependence in disguise. Contrast that with the person who can walk past the glittering shelves and feel no itch in the soul. That is freedom, that is strength. Voluntary poverty is not about living in squalor. It is about learning to say, this does not own me. We have endless data, infinite scrolls, instant answers, but the deeper questions remain unanswered. Why are we here? What is worth suffering for? What does it mean to be good? Stoicism says, look to nature, observe the cosmos, see how it works, then live accordingly, simply justly, with courage and temperance. The Logos is written into the order of the universe, and if you pay attention, it will teach you. Paul wrote, I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether living in plenty or in want. Both men, separated by culture and faith, speak with one voice. Freedom is not in the hands, but in the heart. This mindset is crucial in a time when identity is often purchased. Social media thrives on curated displays of success. Influence is measured by appearances, but this is a fragile world. One algorithm shift, one downturn, and the illusion cracks. What remains? Only the self. And whether it was built on bedrock or sand, to practice voluntary poverty is to build the self on something unshakable. It is to remember that what you can lose is never truly yours. And what is truly yours, virtue, conscience, discipline, faith, no one can take. This is not a call to retreat from life. It is not a celebration of deprivation for its own sake. It is a challenge to hold the world without clutching it. Like a soldier laying down his sword or an actor stepping off the stage once the play is done, the Christian sees further. Death is not an end, but a passage. I am the resurrection and the life, says the Christ. Here, eternity is not abstract. It has a name, a face, a promise. The tomb is not a prison, it is a door. But this belief does not trivialize death. It magnifies the urgency of life. Every act echoes into eternity. Every choice matters. To walk through life ready to let go, without bitterness or panic, it is hard. It requires inner work, but so does everything worth having. So ask yourself, often, what would remain of me if all were stripped away? If the titles, the comforts, the admiration disappeared, would I still stand? And if you cannot answer with a steady yes, then the work has already begun. Suffering and the transformation of the self. No one escapes suffering. Would your words today be worthy of your final breath? Would your actions, your silence, your loves hold their shape if the curtain fell tomorrow? These are not easy questions. They are not meant to be. The Stoic walks forward, unflinching. The Christian kneels, surrendered but not afraid. Both say, life is not yours to keep, it is yours to give. And the present moment? It is all you ever truly have. Not yesterday. That is memory. Not the wise, not the faithful, not the strong. It is the one inheritance shared by all of humanity, not equally, but inevitably. What differs is not the pain itself, but the posture we assume before it. The Stoic does not seek suffering, but he does not run from it. He knows that pain is not the worst thing that can happen to a person. So walk gently, speak clearly, love without delay, and remember, you will die. But until then, you are alive. Live like it means something. If you'd like, I can now gather all 6 parts into a single, clean document, or help you develop them into an audio script, visual sequence, or anything else you're imagining. Far worse is the corruption of the soul, to become bitter, cowardly, unjust, or false. That is real loss. Suffering, if endured rightly, can be the anvil on which integrity is forged. Epictetus, who lived as a slave, put it plainly. Difficulties are things that show a person who they are. Christianity, too, does not deny suffering. At its very center stands a crucified man, mocked, rejected, broken, not as a symbol of defeat, but as a sign that suffering, when entered with truth, can lead to something redemptive. This is not romanticism. There is nothing sentimental about pain. To suffer is to be brought to the edge of one's plans, one's illusions, one's strength. But in that collapse, something honest begins. A man in the modern world loses someone he loves. The grief is suffocating. He can distract himself with work, with screens, with substances, or he can sit in the silence and let the grief do its work. If he does the latter, he may discover a depth in himself that was previously hidden. Compassion for others' pain, clarity about what matters, gratitude unclouded by entitlement. Suffering strips us down. It is not polite, it does not negotiate, it burns away what is superficial. Marcus Aurelius, who buried children and led in plague and war, wrote in his Meditations, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." This is not to deny grief, it is to refuse to be mastered by it. In Christian thought, suffering can be a path of refinement. Paul writes, "We glory in our sufferings because suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope." There is a process, a transformation, not immediate, not automatic, but possible if one does not resist the fire. Both Stoicism and Christianity reject the modern cult of comfort. They do not see pain as a failure, but as a teacher, and every teacher must be listened to. What is this pain trying to reveal? His Stoic offers steadiness. He knows the work of justice is slow, often unnoticed, and that outcomes may never match intentions. Still, he acts. Modern mercy is rare. Social media thrives on exposure, on shaming, on the permanent record of mistakes. The Christian counters this with grace, the refusal to reduce a person to their worst moment, not to erase accountability, but to insist that no one is beyond redemption. What attachment has been broken? What truth has been uncovered? What illusion has died? The answers are not quick, they are not always comforting, but they are real. Take someone going through illness, slow, relentless, humiliating. In such a moment, much of life's noise fades. The social status, the plans, the ego, they become irrelevant. What remains is the question, who am I in the face of this? The Stoic responds not with denial, but with presence. "I cannot control the disease," he says, "but I can control the dignity with which I meet it." The Christian adds, "I do not suffer alone. My suffering is seen. It has meaning, even if I do not yet understand it." Suffering reveals what cannot be faked. No one pretends in a hospital bed. No one poses when holding the hand of the dying. At such times, we are stripped of performance, and the soul is laid bare. This is why both Stoicism and Christianity urge us to reflect on death and loss, even in moments of peace, not to ruin joy, but to deepen it. To live without reflection is to skate on the surface of life. To suffer, when met consciously, is to be pulled beneath that surface into something deeper. But there is danger too. Pain can deform. Not everyone emerges stronger. Some grow cruel, closed, bitter. And so the Stoics speak often of preparation. One must practice fortitude before the storm, not during. One must rehearse the values that suffering may test. Justice, courage, humility. Otherwise, the test breaks more than it reveals. The Christian tradition calls this carrying the cross, not a passive acceptance of injustice, but an active choice to remain faithful under pressure, not to return evil for evil, not to lose love in the face of hatred. Christ forgave in agony. That is the measure of spiritual strength, not feeling, but fidelity. This kind of transformation cannot be mass-produced, it cannot be bought. It is won in silence, in solitude, often in tears. It is a long path, but it leads somewhere real. Suffering, when met with courage and clarity, does not shrink the self. It deepens it. It strips away the non-essential and calls forth the true. It reminds us that life is not about avoiding pain, but becoming the kind of person who can walk through it without losing the soul. So do not fear the fire. Fear becoming hollow. Let the pain do its work, and emerge with something the world cannot give, and therefore cannot take: justice, mercy, and action in the world. We are not islands. No matter how disciplined the soul, no matter how deep the silence within, the world still knocks. Injustice still roams the streets. Corruption poisons institutions. The weak are still crushed under the ambitions of the powerful. What then is the role of the wise? The Stoic and the Christian alike are called not only to endure the world, but to shape it, not through rage or revenge, but through justice and mercy. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, surrounded by politics and war, still began each day by reminding himself to be just. He wrote, "If someone can prove me wrong and show me my mistake, I will gladly change. It is the truth I'm after." He knew that justice begins not in grand statements, but in humility, the willingness to be corrected, the courage to act rightly even when it is inconvenient. Likewise, the Christian is commanded. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. It is not a suggestion, it is a mandate. Faith without action is dead. Contemplation without service is vanity. The Stoic views justice as harmony, each person fulfilling their role in service to the whole, just as the hand does not hoard for itself but acts for the sake of the body. The wise man does not isolate his good from the good of others. He is a citizen of the cosmopolis, the universal city. This is not naive idealism, it is practical ethics. What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee, Marcus wrote. In our time, this means confronting injustice not with slogans, but with steadiness. It means resisting corruption not with counter-corruption, but with integrity. It means stepping into difficult spaces, into systems broken by greed and fear, and refusing to be shaped by them. And yet, the Stoic is also cautious. He does not try to control what lies beyond reason. He knows he cannot fix the world by force. His duty is to act well, not to guarantee outcomes. Epictetus reminds us, "Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens." This is not passivity, it is a deep realism rooted in humility. The Christian tradition sharpens this with the notion of mercy. Justice may demand punishment, but mercy reaches deeper. Christ did not say, "Love those who deserve it." He said, "Love your enemies." This is not softness, it is strength. to forgive when you could retaliate, to serve when you could condemn. This is how the world is transformed, not by those who mirror its violence, but by those who subvert it from within. Justice without mercy becomes cruelty. Mercy without justice becomes permissiveness. But together, justice and mercy, as twin flames, they light the path of the wise. There is also this. Both traditions demand personal coherence. One cannot campaign for justice and abuse their family. One cannot preach mercy and harbor hidden contempt. The battle must begin within. Otherwise, our action in the world is hollow, noise without truth. So ask yourself, do I act justly when no one sees? Do I show mercy even when I have the right to judge? Do I pursue change with patience, or do I demand results at the cost of virtue? Do I believe the ends justify the means, or do I believe the means are the ends? The Stoic replies, the path is the goal. The Christian replies, you will know them by their fruits. To live justly is not a project. It is a way of being. To show mercy is not to forget evil, but to overcome it with something higher. To take action is not always to be successful, but to be faithful, and that is enough. The Logos and the Word, reason, revelation, and meaning. There is a thread that runs through the heart of both Stoic and Christian thought. It is not visible to the distracted. It is not loud, but it is there, pulsing beneath the surface of all things. The Stoics called it Logos, the divine reason, the rational principle that orders the cosmos. Is not merely logic in the modern sense, but structure, purpose, harmony. The Logos is what gives form to the chaos, direction to nature, intelligibility to existence. To live according to nature, as the Stoics taught, is to align one's life with this order, to live rationally, wisely, justly, in accordance with what is. The Christians speak also of the Logos, but for them it is not only principle, it is person. In the beginning was the Word, writes John, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Logos becomes flesh, speaks, suffers, walks among us. Reason is not abandoned, it is fulfilled in revelation. Truth is not an abstraction, it has a voice. These are not two separate realities, but two different angles on the same mystery, that life is not senseless.